Well, this is Pure 24/7 Radio, and I'm delighted to introduce a brand new guest on today's Breakfast Bite. It is Jon Cox from Adventure Plus. Hi, John, how are you?
Hey Nathan, I'm well. Yeah, great to be with you.
Yes, fantastic to have you with us for the very first Breakfast Bite from Adventure Plus. And I have been to Adventure Plus, but for those of us perhaps not so familiar with it, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and Adventure Plus?
So I describe what we do as adventure youth work and youth outreach. So we're a Christian adventure charity. We offer adventure activities for school residentials, Duke of Edinburgh expeditions. We do an instructor training and discipleship gap year, and we then run our own adventure holidays for young people. We work with about 6.5 to 7,000 children and young people every year.
Wow.
So we're pretty busy, and we reckon that if we build our own adventure centre, that could double the number of young people we could reach each year. So we're in the process. We've managed to buy a farm in Oxfordshire, about 90 minutes from central London and 90 minutes from Birmingham and Coventry. And we're in the midst of building an adventure centre at the moment. Everyone's welcome to visit, come and see what we're doing, get involved. There's loads going on, and yeah, we always welcome volunteers and people to be praying for us and so on.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, and I really enjoyed our visit to your headquarters at Windmill Farm. It was a wonderful place, just a beautiful location as well for that sort of thing.
Yeah, it was really great to have your whole team down with us,
Yeah.
and folks really enjoyed coming to sort of sit with you a bit and share a bit about their story. So we've got instructors, we've obviously got hospitality staff, we've got six gap year trainees at the moment with us this year, and quite a number came and had a chat.
Mm. Yeah, it was really great fun, and we really enjoyed that. It was so hospitable to us and a wonderful place to go. But for today's breakfast bite, what have you got prepared for us?
Well, I can describe a little bit about what I got prepared for you. I could just launch on in if you like.
Yeah, that would be great.
Lovely. So I've taken the title for this morning's breakfast bite as being out there in him, because obviously as an adventure company, we spend a lot of time in the beauty of the outdoors. And in the course of my work over the years, I'm also an expedition leader, often multi-day trips by canoe down rivers across Scotland or down rivers in the south of France and in Canada and so on. And I found as a Christian, when you spend extended time out in the beauty of God's creation, you just somehow perhaps become a little bit, excuse me, more attuned to the pattern and the seasons and the order of everything, and the raw power when the weather plays up a little, but also the beauty of the detail if you're lying under a tarp and wake up in the morning and your eyes just alight on some moss next to you, or the beauty of the intricacy of a small mountain flower or whatever it might be. There's so much in there. And I also feel that God really wants to speak to us through the beauty of his creation. But in our 21st century world, we're often really cut off from that because we jump in a car in the morning and get to work. We're immersed on our screens. For people in business, it's the constant pressure of emails and LinkedIn and so on. But actually being free from that and getting away from it all can be hugely refreshing and hugely encouraging. I was brave enough to share, and I might lose some of your listeners at this point, Nathan, but I was brave enough to share in the vestry of one of the churches that supports us that there are three words of God. And this is a Bible-believing evangelical church. And they're like, well, hold on, what's one of our mission partners saying here? Well, obviously, there's the Bible, God's word, suitable, Timothy, for teaching, rebuking, correcting, to live our lives by. Then, of course, in the beginning was the word, and that word was Jesus. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. But also God speaks to us through creation. And I do think we miss quite a lot of what is on offer there, if you like, in our regular pulpit teaching. So, just dipping into the Psalms, for example, we can remember, I'm just putting this up on a screen, and dear Zoom is only giving me part of the screen, so that's interesting. But God speaks to us through his creation. The skies proclaim the works of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they reveal knowledge. They have no speech, they use no words, no sound is heard from them, yet their voice goes out into all the earth, their words to the ends of the world. Or flicking through to Romans 1, for his God's invisible attributes are thoroughly known from the creation of the cosmos, being known by means of the things which have been made, whether his eternal power or divinity. And then flicking across to Colossians, the Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, thrones or powers, rulers or authorities. All things have been made and created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. So God actively not only was the wonderful creator of this huge and beautiful world and the entire cosmos that we get to live in and on, but he speaks to us through his creation. And so although we're an Adventure Youth Work charity at Adventure Plus, and we, as I've mentioned, work with hundreds of children and young people a year, I'm not so involved now in running taster canoe sessions or kayak sessions for 8 to 12-year-olds. We've got much cooler, much more fun young instructors that do that. But I have started offering what we call active retreats, going out and immersing ourselves, whether it's on a canoe journey or just hiking across Cumbria or the Brecon Beacons, intentionally to immerse ourselves and be mindful of the fact we're out in the beauty of God's creation, and maybe just sharing one thought each day, picking up an element in God's creation to think about the character of that, because if it's been created by God, it reflects his character in some way or another. So if you grab a Bible index or a concordance, it's amazing how many references there are to an element in God's creation, like rock or water or hills and mountains or rivers and streams and the seas or the cosmos or fire. So there are loads of references. And not only is God described in several places being like a rock, it actually says, he is my rock. He is a rock. Well, if God is a rock, that could be hugely disappointing. I thought there might be a bit more to him than that. But actually, what is the characteristic that the Bible is then picking up and saying, no, God is a rock? So we might just reflect on an element on each day of that active retreat. So I thought, sort of in wrapping up, I might just explore maybe two of those two elements, just think what we can pull out of those. And so I think we will start with rock because we've already sort of breezed past that. And just one or two thoughts, and there's so much more that we could pick up. And I'd love to hear, by the way, from any listeners who want to add to this debate, because I'm learning more and more about this over the months and years that I'm spending more time out in the beauty of God's creation. I reckon there's at least a book in it as well. But anyway, thinking about rock, obviously, let's go to Psalms, and we read that at the start of our Christian journey, God pulled us out of the mud and mire of our lives and set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. Well, that rock is described as being firm. It's actually rock hard, isn't it? That's why it's a firm foundation on which to build our lives. And that is talking about the rock of God's truth. And God's ways, we read, never changes. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. So then it's perhaps useful for us to bear in mind in our 21st century multi-faith, anything goes almost postmodern, what is truth culture, that actually God's ways never change. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. That's why it's a firm place to stand. That's why when we set our feet on his rock, we know we're standing in a safe place, but actually we're trusting his ways, not our own. But that also means that when we get to a little bit of God's teaching, God's word, God's wisdom, God's knowledge, he is omniscient. He knows all things. We have to bow then to his unchanging truth and nature and superiority. So we can't then just take a little bit of God's teaching and go, well, this is a bit inconvenient in our 21st century multicultural anything goes society. So I'll just pretend this bit of God's rock solid truth is actually suddenly become marshmallow. And I'll just peel that off and flick it over there because it might sound a little bit awkward in our postmodern society. No, it's not like that. God's ways are not going to change just because of man's fashionable thinking in 2025. So, in many ways, that is hugely comforting because we've got to trust in his truth. And then let's flick forward 20 or so Psalms to, I've not got it in front of me, but I'm going to say Psalm 61. Folks can check it out and see if I'm right or wrong, but it's somewhere around there. And about verse 2, it says, the psalmist says to the Lord, Lord, lead me to a rock that is higher than I. And if that's God's relationship with the psalmist, well, his ways never change. That's his relationship with us as well. And the first time God lifted the psalmist onto a rock that is higher than I was when he lifted him out the mud and mire of his life, and does the same for us before we knew God, and set his feet on a rock and gave him a firm place to stand. But actually, the journey doesn't end there. I'm sure many of us have climbed a mountain where we looked up and we're starting to feel a little bit breathless and ready for our next snack attack and our drink. But we can see the top up there, can't we? And then we sort of strive and persevere up to it. And oh, heck, that wasn't the top after all. That's another shoulder, and there's probably another shoulder and another shoulder. But actually, as we progress higher, the view gets better, perhaps the air gets clearer. We look back and see how far we've come, and the topography around us starts to make sense. And that's how it is with our journey with God. Whether we've been a Christian from last Sunday when we were at church and heard a life-changing message, or whether we've, like me, been a Christian for decades, we're continually working and growing into our faith. And so we're a work in progress. And that's the way it is with God. We're never fully going to mature beyond how God can take us further, and that's wonderful. But we're not just going to, another sort of analogy from what we can learn here, we're not just going to sort of somehow stumble onto that rock that's up there. It takes perseverance, and that's what God's saying in our relationship with him. We've got to work at it if we're going to take him seriously. So yeah, as he says, lead us to the rock that is higher than I. Well, actually, yes, he's going to lead us, but we've got to put in the perspiration and the effort and be intentional to grow in our relationship. I'm going to actually wrap up because there's so much to say on all these things with my thoughts on rock. One more thought, and we'll have to do water maybe on another breakfast bite because I can see we're well into our 10 minutes, Nathan. But a final thought, a verse I discovered recently in Deuteronomy, which I think, and again, as a rock climber, I'm a climbing instructor, hugely important. Deuteronomy, the Lord says, but your rock, people, not people of Israel, your rock is not like my rock. And as climbers, we need to be sure that we are trusting the right rock. So yes, rock is rock solid if it's good, solid granite and we're rock climbing on it. But I'm thinking about a chairlift ride that we take regularly when we take groups to the Alps in February half term. And I look down below the chairlift and there is some really horrible, friable rock that I could just see if you were climbing on that, it would just pull away in your hands. Well, God's rock's not like that. His rock is rock solid. His ways are the same. He never changes. But we do need, if we're going to commit ourselves in faith to the rock, to the next foothold or handhold, let's make sure we're trusting the right rock, because there's plenty of wrong rock out there that will not prove to be true in the day of challenge when we really need to know that God is there for real. So there you go. That's one, just a couple of thoughts from one element of what we can learn about the character of the Creator God, of what he's created in this wonderful world he's given us to enjoy. But important, I'll just add what we can learn about the character of the Creator God from his creation as described in the Bible. So there you go. That's rock. Maybe I'll join you for another day if I'm invited and we can explore water. And I'd love to pick up a thought on fire as well. And finally, perhaps one or two of your guests may enjoy the concept of being out there in the beauty of God's creation for 3 or 4 days and exploring this on location, if you like. And if so, yes, they can get in touch. I'm delivering one of our Out There in Him active retreats across Scotland by canoe in May this year, but there's plenty more on the schedule.
Wow. Thanks so much, John. That's fantastic. I mean, the idea of the rock, it's just, I mean, like you said, there's so much you could say about that. So much you can say to compare it to God. I mean, like you say, we see God in creation, in the rocks, in the streams, in the mountains, in the skies, in everything. It really does shout about who he is and how much he loves us.
Yeah, and it's awesomely beautiful. And so when we're thinking about the character of the Creator God, that we're going to be, at the end of our days, caught up with Him in worship. Um, Somebody said once, we never tire of gazing on beauty. That is the way we're wired, and that really helped me make sense also of eternity and spending time with the creator and the author of all that is really good and all that is really beautiful.
Absolutely. And I mean, I've heard so many people say how it seems like, imagine an eternity. I mean, that seems like such a long time. We can't really comprehend. But like you say, we never tire of beauty. And when you're with God, it's not going to
Mm.
get boring, is it?
No, exciting times.
Yes.
Nathan, great to talk. Thanks for having me on, and all
Uh,
the very best for all you guys are doing with Pure Radio.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'll speak soon.
I look forward to it.
Pure 24/7 radio is listener supported, which means we are free, online, and always pure because of the generous support of our listeners. If you would like to contribute financially, please visit pure247radio.org. If you'd like to find out how we use your money, please visit the Our Cost section. Any donation of any size will help keep us on air and broadcasting for free. Thank you.